Suppose we have built an e-commerce application. Whenever a customer places an order, the order service calls the payment service, and the payment service internally calls an external bank API to process the payment. Assume the bank API responds within around 200 milliseconds, but now imagine the bank is facing some issue. The bank API is not completely down, it is still accepting requests, but instead of responding within 200 milliseconds, it start taking 5 seconds. This is a huge jump in latency. Think about it. What happens to our application? Our customer places an order, the request reaches the payment service calls the bank API and waits for the response. Meanwhile, another customers also places an order and their requests also wait for the response. Very quickly, we can have hundreds of requests waiting for the bank API to respond. Each request consume resources. For example, they may occupy threads, HTTP connections, memory, and connection pool capacity. As more and more requests start waiting, resources inside the payment service are getting exhausted. Now the payment service itself becomes slow, and this creates another problem. Remember, the order service depends on the payment service. So request inside the order service now start waiting for the payment service. Its resources also start getting consumed. Eventually, something that started as a problem inside the bank API begins affecting the payment service, then the order service, and potentially other parts of our application. This is what we call a cascading failure. A failure or a slowdown in one dependency starts propagating to other services. Think about it. How do we stop the failure of one downstream service from spreading the rest of our system? This is exactly the problem that the circuit breaker pattern is designed to solve. Conceptually, we put a circuit breaker around the call from the payment service to the bank API. The circuit breaker continuously observes the calls going to the bank API. As long as the bank API is healthy, requests are allowed. But suppose the bank API starts failing or taking too long to respond, the circuit breaker starts recording those failures. For example, let's say our configuration says if 50% of the recent requests fail, consider the bank API unhealthy. Once that threshold is crossed, the circuit breaker opens. When the circuit breaker states open, the next request does not even go to the bank API. Instead of waiting 4 or 5 seconds for a request that is very likely to fail, the circuit breaker fails the request immediately. This is fail-fast approach to prevent cascading failure. Depending on the application implementation logic, we can return an error or execute a fallback. This protects our payment service from continuously wasting threads, connections, and other resources on a dependency that we already know is unhealthy. And because the payment service remains protected, the failure is less likely to propagate back to the order service. And that's how a circuit breaker helps prevent cascading failures. Now you might be thinking, if we stop calling the bank API, how will we know when it has recovered? To understand that, we need to understand the 3 states of a circuit breaker: closed, open, and half open. A circuit breaker mainly operates in 3 states: closed, open, and half open. Let's understand them using the same bank API example. Initially, the circuit breaker is in the closed state. Closed simply means requests are allowed to reach the bank API. The circuit breaker monitors these requests and keeps track of failures. As long as the failure rate remains below our configured threshold, the circuit stays closed. But suppose the bank API starts failing and our failure threshold is crossed, the circuit breaker moves from closed state to open state. When the circuit breaker is open, requests are no longer sent to the bank API. Instead, they fail immediately or execute a fallback. It depends on our implementation logic, right? This is what protects our resources and prevents the failure from continuously spreading through the system. But obviously, we cannot keep the circuit open forever. The bank API might recover. So after a configured amount of time, for example, let's say if we configure 30 seconds, the circuit breaker moves to the half open state. In half open state, the circuit breaker allows a limited number of requests to reach the bank API. Think of them as test requests or sort of health check to the bank API, right? If those requests succeed, we assume the bank API has recovered, right? And after that, the normal traffic resumes. But if those requests fail again, the circuit breaker moves from half open state to open state. It means the circuit breaker blocks request again and waits before checking the dependency later. So the complete life cycle looks like this. Let me summarize all the three states. Closed means we allow request and monitor failures. Open state means we stop calling the unhealthy dependency, uh, take the fail fast approach. Half open means we send a few test requests to check whether the dependency has recovered. And that's the basic state machine behind a circuit breaker. Now we understand that when failures cross a certain threshold, the circuit breaker moves from closed state to open state. But how does it actually calculate that threshold? A circuit breaker does not usually make this decision based on a single fail request. Instead, it observes a window of recent request. For example, suppose we configure a window size of 10 requests and assume we configured failure threshold to 50%. And let's also assume 60% of the requests have failed. The threshold has been crossed. Now the circuit breaker moves from closed state to open state. This window of request is commonly called a sliding window. As new requests come in, the circuit breaker keeps evaluating recent request outcomes rather than making the decision based on one isolated failure. But there is another important configuration. Suppose our window size is 10, but the application has just started. The very first request fails. Technically, our failure rate is 100%. Should we immediately open the circuit breaker? Just think about it. So usually no, we don't have enough data yet. That's why circuit breakers have a concept called minimum number of calls. For example, if we configured a sliding window size equal to 10, minimum number of calls equal to 5, and failure threshold equal to 50%. Until at least 5 calls have been recorded, the circuit breaker won't evaluate the failure rate for opening the circuit. This prevents 1 or 2 random failures from unnecessarily opening the circuit. Failures are not the only thing we may want to monitor. Remember our original problem? The bank API was not completely down. It had become slow. So circuit breakers can also consider slow request. For example, we might configure slow call duration equal to 2 seconds, slow call threshold equal to 50%. If more than 50% of our calls are taking longer than 2 seconds, we can consider the dependency unhealthy even if those requests eventually succeed. This is important because a service does not have to return errors to cause cascading failures. A consistently slow service can exhaust resources as well. Once the circuit breaker opens, another configuration determines how long should we keep it open before checking the bank API again. For example, if we configure wait duration equal to 30 seconds, for those 30 seconds, requests fail fast. After that, the circuit breaker can move toward half open state and allow a limited number of test requests. Before we conclude, there are two other concepts that are commonly used along with circuit breakers: the timeout and retry. All three improve the resilience of our system, but they solve different problems. Let's understand them using the same bank API example. First is timeout. Suppose the payment service calls the bank API. Normally, it responds within 200 milliseconds, but because of some issue, it does not respond for several seconds. Without a timeout, our payment service may keep waiting unnecessarily. So we configure a timeout, let's say 2 seconds. So timeout answers a very simple question: how long should I wait for this request? It prevents a single slow request from holding our resources for too long. Second is retry. Now suppose the bank API call fails because of a temporary network issue. If we immediately try again, the second request might succeed. That's where retry comes in. So retry answers, if this request fails, should I try again? Retries are useful for temporary or transient failures, but we have to use them carefully because retries can actually make an outage worse. And third is the circuit breaker. Now suppose the bank API is not experiencing a temporary failure. It has been consistently failing for some time. At this point, continuously retrying or sending new requests does not make sense. The circuit breaker detects that the dependency is unhealthy and stops the cause from reaching it, right? So circuit breaker answers, should I even make this call right now? The easiest way to remember the difference is, for timeout, how long should I wait? For retry, should I try again? For circuit breaker, should I even make the call? These three mechanisms don't replace each other. They solve different part of the same resilience problem. Now there is something very important about retries. Retries can help recover from temporary failures, but poorly designed retries can actually make cascading failures worse. Let's say our bank API is already overloaded. The payment service sends a request, it fails. So we retry. That request also fails. We retry again. One customer request has now generated 3 calls to a service that is already struggling. Now imagine 1,000 requests arriving at the same time. Instead of approximately 1,000 calls, we could generate up to 3x request, which is 3,000 calls. The downstream service was already overloaded, and our retry mechanism just gave it even more work. This is often called a retry storm, and it can become even worse when retries happen at multiple levels, right? Now retries can amplify as requests move through the call chains. Instead of helping the system recover, we can unintentionally put even more pressure on the failing dependency. That is why retry should be limited and carefully designed with techniques such as back off and jitter. And this is another place where circuit breaker helps. Once we determine that the bank API is consistently unhealthy, we should stop sending new calls to it for some time. So remember, retry is useful when the failure is temporary, but if the dependency is consistently unhealthy, blindly retrying can make the problem worse. So in the next tutorial, we will take this concept and actually implement it using Spring Boot and Resilience 4G, where we will see the circuit breaker transition from closed to open to half open state in a running application. If you are finding this video helpful, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps support the channel and motivates me to create more practical system design and backend engineering tutorials like this.